Hello and welcome to a special edition of Shattered Lives, a podcast for Reach Ireland, including the Irish Daily Star and Mirror. I'm Michael O'Toole and here's Paul Healy.
Hello, as you can probably tell if you are watching this, I'm sitting in the back of my car with every possible light I can have shining on me, so forgive me for the horrific visuals. You don't have to watch me though.
I think we're going to call this an emergency pod because this is a
It
very
is
quick
very much so.
reaction pod to what has happened in court 24 of the four courts. Just over, it's 10 to 6 now, so at about 10 to 5, 12 minutes to 5. What happened?
Yes, we've had a verdict today in the Conor McGregor civil case, and the jury have found that Conor McGregor did indeed assault Nikita Hand, the allegation being that he raped her in the Beacon Hotel on the 9th of December 2018. The jury have found in favour of Nikita Hand's version of events, where she says that she was raped by Conor McGregor in that hotel room on that date, and he has been found liable for damages in this civil case. So the jury has found in her favour and has awarded her €248,000. So Mr. McGregor will have to pay her that amount in damages. So that is damages in relation to her loss of earnings to date and her loss of earnings in future. And there were other exemplary damages that they could have awarded and they did not award in this case.
So we're going to clarify something very quickly. They found in the case for Miss Hand against Conor McGregor, but they did not find for Miss Hand in her case against James Lawrence.
Yes, they found that James Lawrence did not assault Nikita Hand. Now, the case of James Lawrence was quite strange, in that. And I say quite strange in that Miss Hand had accused James Lawrence of assaulting her, but she had actually said on the witness stand that she believed his allegation that he had had sex with her was not true, and that she doesn't believe she ever had sex with him. So I think that she was taking that assault case on the basis of what he was claiming to have happened, i.e. if he had sex with me, then he raped me as well. The jury have obviously found that there wasn't enough evidence for that. But in the case of Conor McGregor, look, there were injuries there. There was very compelling evidence from a Dr. Kane in relation to, the medical evidence of the tampon. And there was evidence in relation to text messages and the things that Nikita Hand said to her partner and to her friends within the first 24 hours, what she said to Gardaí about being assaulted by Conor McGregor. And obviously the jury have found in favour of all of that.
So let's get into this. Personally, I thought the medical evidence was far too much of a hurdle for Mr. McGregor's defence to clear, particularly the evidence about the tampon. I mean, I know they might have a trigger warning about this, and we've said this repeatedly, but the tampon was essentially up Miss Hand's vagina and had to be removed in a surgical procedure.
Yes, and we also heard evidence about Mr. McGregor's DNA being found in a similar location. So I think all of that evidence was quite compelling. Now, on the other side of things, Remy Farrell, defendant for Conor McGregor, was trying to make the point that there's evidence on the CCTV, and that if you look at the CCTV, that Nikita Hand appears to be drunk and disorientated, and that she's flirtatious, and that she is effectively asking for romantic engagement with Conor McGregor and James Lawrence. And he was trying to say that the CCTV footage doesn't lie, and also the text messages that she sent, for example, the text message she sent to her boyfriend at the time, Steve, that she lied to him about having a good time and that she was out with the girls, and basically trying to sow doubt in the jury's minds in relation to her credibility.
So let's drill down a bit into this. I thought she was going to win the case against Conor McGregor. Were you surprised, or did you think it was going to happen that way?
I think that the evidence of Dr. Kane, of Dr. Anne Leader, her psychiatrist, and the evidence in relation to the first people she told, albeit the story was a little all over the place in the beginning, I thought that her story the main beats of it were consistent from day one, and there were pictures, some of which we've seen, of the extreme injuries she had, and they were extreme. I mean, bruising from her neck down. The evidence of the paramedic, Etna Scully, who said this was the worst thing she had ever seen in her career. All of that I thought was extremely strong, compelling evidence that made me think that when a jury sits down and looks at all of the factors, that they would find in her favor. Um, but I thought that right up until the closing speeches, when I thought that the closing speech of Remy Farrell was very strong. In fairness, he put up a very staunch defense of his client. And I even remember his sentence is still, his final statement is still ringing in my ears of, will the door even hit you before you're back out? If it was anyone other than Mr. McGregor. So he's trying to assert that, just because he's famous, that you might have to consider it differently. I think on the balance of it, the witnesses that were called for Nikita Hand were very, very strong. And I don't know how you could overlook all of that physical, medical evidence.
Okay, so I'm just going to point out one thing for our international listeners: €248,000. That's about $258,000 and about £206,000 sterling. So, Paul, you were there. The civil trial lasted about 2 weeks, I think. You were there for all but 2 days, and thanks to our colleague Nicola Donnelly for filling in for you. Bring us into the room when the jury came in. What was it like? It's always a very tense moment when a jury comes in with a verdict.
Extremely tense, and earlier in the day, around 2 o'clock, there was a sudden stir. We were all in the room, and there was a thinking that something was happening. But in actual fact, the jury were asking for the possibility of staying out until 6 o'clock. So then we realized, okay, well, they're not coming to a verdict now. But I thought that was possibly an indication that they wanted to finish matters today, even if it took to 6 o'clock, because they would have only had to go to 4 o'clock otherwise. They were asking to stay till 6. So that indicated to me they're going to try to finish it today. And it also indicated to me, and we'll never know, by the way, and I'm only speculating now that we have the result, that perhaps they had decided in her favour and they were going to use the remaining time to come up with the damages, because that takes a period of time for them to go through all of the damages. So the atmosphere was extremely tense when it came to the actual verdict, and when we realised something was stirring, we saw the jury minder come out to the registrar and whisper in her ear, and she then went into the room where the judge was. So we knew something was up straight away. I just had this tense, anxious feeling in my chest. I didn't think that this case had affected me to that degree, but it obviously had. And I think any journalist and anyone that sat in there every day really felt it in that moment. Tense.
Well, I think from my experience in big trials, I mean, I can remember Dwyer and Joe O'Reilly, both the same things. My knees went when we're standing. We were standing. Your knees sort of go, and your heart's beat. I think not that you're invested in it, because you've been there so long and you've really concentrated on it, that it does get to you. So now, before the verdict came in, the judge had comments for the courtroom.
Yes, he told everybody to remain calm, to not get out of control or react to the verdict, and he said that anybody that could, that might do that, could find themselves inside a jail cell. So he was pretty, serious in his remarks. The courtroom was absolutely packed to the rafters, and he asked some people who were standing up to go up to the public gallery upstairs. It had been closed today. Throughout this trial, make of it what you will, there has been huge public interest, but there have in particular been a certain cohort of very young men attending this trial on a daily basis. As I said, the courtroom's been packed to the rafters every single day. Clearly, Conor McGregor is a very famous person and he has his fans. And there are many people who may feel this is the wrong verdict today, and they may support him in that, as is their right. It's important to point out two things here. The jury have found in favor of Nikita Hand's version of events, and they have awarded her damages, i.e., they found Conor McGregor liable for assault under the eyes of the law. And break down the facts of that assault, it is that he raped Nikita Hand in the Beacon Hotel. But Conor McGregor, the second point is not a convicted rapist. But I suppose he will forever be branded as a result of this case and as a result of the findings of this jury.
And yes, and we keep on stressing this. This was a civil case. Nobody is facing any criminal sanction. But anyway, back to this. Talk us through the process. Was it, did the registrar ask the jury, I don't know, it's a four-man form, did they ask the jury four-person for a verdict? What happened there?
Yeah, the jury were asked by the registrar, have you reached a verdict? And the foreman said, we have, and confirmed that you've signed this. I have. The registrar was handed the piece of paper with the verdict on it. Was then handed to Judge Alex Owens, who read it, and then Judge Owens read out the verdict, saying firstly that they found that. So the question they had to answer was: did Conor McGregor assault Nikita Hand? Answer: yes. Did Conor McGregor assault? Sorry. Did James Lawrence assault Nikita Hand? Answer: no. Then it went on to damages. So the damages in this case total to, as I said, €248,000. That was broken down into different amounts, but it adds up to that amount. So they didn't find the exemplary punitive damages, which could have been. They could have found a much higher amount of money. Probably in the middle ground here.
So what was the reaction in the courtroom when the verdict was read out?
I'm not a body language expert, but I would say anyone that was looking at Conor McGregor in particular, and he was right in front of me, so I got a pretty good look at him. He was quite clearly and obviously distraught. He looked very emotional. He was breathing very, very heavily. I mean, exhaling quite loudly. Seemed quite stunned by the verdict. I mean, even before the verdict, he kind of came into the room in that kind of particular state. He was all the time being held onto by his longtime partner and fiance, Dee Devlin, who was sitting next to him throughout that. He had his entire family there, his mother, his father, his sister Aoife was there, and a number of other family and friends, deeply, deeply distraught. And also Nikita Hand was very emotional and upset and was being hugged by, well, I don't know if she was, it's wrong for me to say upset, but she was tearful and emotional at the verdict. Obviously, ultimately, she was happy with it.
Were there any gasps or anything from the public gallery or the body of the courtroom?
I didn't hear gasps as such, but when you're in that moment and you're trying to live blog it, you're just trying to get it out as quickly as possible. But I think there was a stunned silence from McGregor's side of the room, and they left quite quickly. So, he went into a small room and then he eventually came out.
I was listening to you about Mr. McGregor's reaction, and it called to mind, I think Remy Farrell said this in his closing speech, that if the jury finds for Miss Hand, it will be devastating for Mr. McGregor. And if the jury finds for Mr. McGregor, it will be devastating for Miss Hand. So just by your portrait there, Mr. McGregor was obviously deeply upset by the verdict.
Oh, he was distraught is the word. I mean, he was visibly completely dumbstruck by this, and I mean, it was just written all over his face. He came out of the court, and I mean, he was just sort of swarmed upon by a frenzy of media, even journalists and reporters that I didn't even know were there. Cameras, the BBC were there, right in his face. But he said nothing. He remained stone-faced and got straight into a car. So he didn't answer any questions coming out of court.
So Mr. McGregor didn't talk. Miss Hand did, and it was you filmed it, and it's a very, very strong and very moving statement. Now, we're going to play it in full for everybody to listen to and watch now. I think it's worth playing the whole thing, don't you, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's worth everybody seeing and hearing Miss Hand in her own words.
Okay, so we're going to play that now, and we'll come back when it's done.
I would like to start off by saying I'm overwhelmed, untouched by the support I have received from everybody. First, I want to thank the Coleman legal team and my 3 barristers, John, Gordon, Ray Boland and Sean. They have been amazing from start to finish. I want to thank Mr. Justice Alexander Owens, the jury, all the witnesses. I want to thank the doctors, nurses and everyone at the sexual assault treatment unit and the Rotunda Hospital for looking after me, especially my own Dr. Frank Clark. I want to thank the Rape Crisis Centre, especially Cleena, who has been by my side throughout this entire period. I want to thank all the guards and the ambulance crew. I want to thank all the women and men out there who have supported me throughout this trial. For every person who reached out to me, a card, a letter, email, everything, it hasn't gone unnoticed. Thank you, I really appreciate it so much. I want to thank my partner Gary, who has been so supportive for the last 4 years and has held my hand throughout this trial every day and every other day. I want to thank my mum and all my family and friends. Lastly, I want to thank my daughter Freya, who I'm most grateful for. She has given me so much strength and courage over the last 6 years throughout this nightmare to keep on pushing forward for justice. I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice. I know this has impacted not only my life, my daughters, my family and friends tremendously, and it's something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. But now that justice has been served, I can now try and move on and look forward to the future with my family and friends and daughter.
So that was very moving, Paul, and I thought she spoke very eloquently and very strongly.
Yeah, and obviously Miss Hand was quite emotional, but she spoke through that emotion, and you could tell that she really wanted to thank members of the public for their support, thank her own legal team, and just to really get that message out there that justice was possible, albeit in a different form. She did answer questions briefly and said that she did confirm that this finally felt like vindication for her. We had heard her own barrister at the very start of this case saying that this was the only avenue left for her to achieve vindication, because obviously the DPP, there was a Garda investigation. Gardaí wanted to charge Conor McGregor. The DPP ultimately decided not to bring charges, and this remained the only avenue for her to have any form of vindication. She feels that she got that today.
Okay, so a few procedural things. You can appeal a civil court case, but you have 28 days. We don't know if Mr. McGregor is going to do that, but in law, you can appeal a civil matter. And this is not the end, because we also have the issue of costs. So I think that's going to be ruled upon by Judge Owen next Thursday. Usually, and this is just usually what happens, is the person who loses the case has to pay the winning person's costs. Now, you and I know this, Paul. I know this because I was involved. Legal fees are astronomical. A 2-week high court civil trial, it's hundreds of thousands of euro. It could be €500,000. That is what possibly Mr. McGregor is having. It's in the judge's gift. He might go, right, Mr. McGregor is going to have to pay 30% of Miss Hand's fees, but he could say, the winner takes it all, really.
I do think, though, and now I'm just expressing my personal opinion, so which shouldn't really do too often, but I do think that it's based upon fact. Conor McGregor is a multi-millionaire, and I think while the costs are damaging to him, I'm sure that the bigger cost for him is the toll that this will take in terms of his reputation. You know, people there will forever be a mark on his reputation. He will forever be branded by people as a rapist. And while he is not a convicted rapist under the eyes of the law, he has been found liable for one. And I don't know what effect that will have on his career, but that has got to be very emotionally damaging for him and potentially financially damaging for him well into the future.
Look, we're not experts on brand and reputation, but I think it is fair to say his brand and reputation have taken a hammering, of course, as a result of this verdict today. I just want to, one thing is of interest, well, two things. I had a lot of people, probably like yourself, Paul, saying, when's the jury coming back? Nobody knows. It's in the gift of the jury. It always winds reporters up because it's how long is a piece of string. So that's one thing. And the other thing, which is interesting, the issue paper said assault. But I note that Mr. Justice Owen said, so the issue paper is what the jury have to sign, and it's what they decide. But I note Mr. Justice Owen said when he was talking to the jury, rape is assault. So that's why it says assault on the issue paper. Yeah,
I mean, look, that's what it is under I suppose the civil court rules. It is deemed assault, but the facts of the case are about a rape allegation. So he has been found liable for that. So the jury have found in favour of Miss Hand on the balance of probabilities that she was raped by Conor McGregor in the Beacon Hotel.
So when we were doing these pods, it was always a nightmare because there's a jury, 8 women and 4 men. And our simple rule is we write and say what the jury hear. So there's legal argument and there are various things. So one night we had 17 edits because I kept on and Paul made the odd mistake and it was pretty horrendous. But we're okay now.
I made 17 mistakes.
Yeah, but we're okay now. However, I think we can talk about some things that the jury did not hear.
Yeah, well, I mean, there wasn't too many major issues, but at the very start of this trial, perhaps what's most interesting to people, this is something that was not heard by the jury. This actually happened before a jury was even impaneled. The side for Miss Hand, John Gordon, senior counsel, was asking whether he could admit into evidence an incident that happened in the summer of this year, so in June of 2024, when Nikita Hand's home was broken into by men wearing balaclavas. And we heard that the windows were smashed in the house, that they entered the bedroom of the home where Nikita Hand's partner was, and that he received stab wounds in the incident, that her own daughter, her young daughter, dialed 999 and Gardaí came. Now, Mr. Gordon did say that they were not laying blame at the feet of Conor McGregor in relation to this incident, and they were saying that they would be making the claim that this incident was to do with his supporters, that this was carried out by his supporters, and that it would be relevant to Miss Hand's claim because that she had to move out of the Drimna area, and we heard that she was in fear for her safety and for her life during the course of the trial. But ultimately, Judge Owens said that it wasn't relevant to the case and he ruled that the jury should not hear it. Now, the jury very nearly did end up hearing about it because I recall that the evidence of Dr. Frank Clark, Nikita Hand's GP, he actually brought up a very difficult event that she suffered this year and that he'd seen her around that time. I remember the jury were brought out of the room when he said that, and that Judge Owens said, well, now the incident that I said shouldn't be mentioned has just been mentioned, so I suppose we'll have to proceed. If it comes up, it comes up. But it then just didn't come up. So the jury didn't hear about it. So you're hearing about it now for the first time, that this incident happened. Obviously quite terrifying, and that Miss Hand's partner received stab wounds, stab injuries. I'm sure that is subject to its own investigation, given Gardaí were involved, so more might come out from that, but it wasn't deemed relevant in this case, and obviously it didn't deter the jury from coming to their decision.
And to stress again, Mr. Gordon said he wasn't laying that anything to do with Mr. McGregor. It was it was supporters. So, but there was quite a lot of. I remember one. I think that may have been the one day. I remember looking at your tweets, and there was quite a lot of ins and outs with legal argument. It was stoppy-starty because there was a lot of things happening.
Yeah, I mean, they were quite minuscule things. I can't even remember them. They were that irrelevant. But that was the only major thing that the jury didn't hear about that particular incident.
Okay, so it was quite an atmosphere in the courtroom and outside. Were there people milling about afterwards? Non-hacks, ordinary people, real
Oh
people.
yeah, there throughout this and even today, there have been people, just hanging about. I don't know. I've seen people trying to get into selfies and take photographs with or speak to Conor McGregor. He's that famous. I mean, he walks down the street, he's just being accosted by people left, right, and center. Um, I look at he's a famous person. I personally find it strange. I mean, he's up in a court case for rape. You know, a rape that he's now been found liable for. But look, each their own. He'll continue to be a very, very famous person, and we'll have to see what effect this has on his career. But I thought that Nikita Hand was incredibly well spoken outside of court, and if you believe her version of events, if you side with her, you have to say that she's an incredibly brave woman because she went up against an extremely famous person. And we even heard that she will forever be looking over her shoulder, living in fear, even after this, that she feels she'll be a marked woman. You only have to look at social media, forget about real life for a minute to see the amount of people that have called her all kinds of names and, leveled all kinds of accusations against her. Whatever side you fall down upon, I don't think that's right. I think it's pretty fucked up actually, and I feel for her because even though they've found in her favor, she'll forever have to look over her shoulder in one sense. She had to leave her home. So I mean, I really feel for her in that sense.
And it was really high stakes. It was high stakes for Mr. McGregor. It was also high stakes for Miss Hand because if she lost the case against Mr. McGregor, everybody would accuse her of being a liar and making the whole thing up.
Well, I mean, they still will accuse her of being a liar and making it up, but at least she can feel some form of vindication from this. I do wonder, and I think I've answered the question in my own mind, but I wonder what you think, whether, now that a jury has found that it's probable that these events occurred, does that open up any new potential? I mean, this is the end of the matter, isn't it? I think it is. I don't think it can be looked at again or anything like that.
No, unless no, I don't think there's any. The DPP examined this twice. I have to be very clear about this. The DPP and Miss Hand wrote 2 letters to the DPP, effectively saying why, and the
asking
DPP
for an appeal.
Yeah, and appealing it, yeah, and the DPP was very strong about this. So look, I don't see anything criminal, right?
Yeah, no, me neither. Yeah.
And the only other thing that may happen is Mr. McGregor may appeal this. I'm not an expert in anything, but I haven't really. I just had a quick search there. You can appeal civil cases. Maybe it's up to him, but I don't know.
It's the end of a long road for Nikita Hand. She went through the criminal process she didn't want to engage in the first place. Ultimately, Gardaí investigated it and went to the DPP. The DPP decided not to charge. This was the final route for her, and a jury of her peers have found that they believe her on the balance of probabilities. In terms of on the balance of beyond a reasonable doubt, that's a different standard, and I guess we'll never know because it was never tested as to whether McGregor would have been found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt or not. But certainly on the balance of probabilities, they found to believe her, and that's that.
All right, so
it's an incredible case. An incredible case, probably one of the most incredible cases I've had to cover. In the last 2 years, we've covered quite a few incredible cases. This has been extraordinary.
I'm going to use a word. It's probably not the right word. Did you enjoy covering it?
No. Well,
do you know what I mean?
There's. I didn't enjoy listening to it. You do get a buzz from covering a big case like this, yes, and I'd be wrong if I didn't say that. but it was grim, and similar to the Aisling Murphy trial, uh, you do come out of it kind of a bit marked by it. I mean, the evidence in this case was graphic, it was extreme, and there were a lot of emotions in court. One thing that probably doesn't come across when you're writing a straight court report is just the amount of times that Nikita Hand broke down crying, that she had to leave the room. She was emotionally distraught throughout, and it was very hard to separate your reporter hat from your human heart, which feels immense empathy for somebody who is clearly struggling and suffering on the witness stand and even in court. And her own partner was in floods of tears many times as well. It's hard to not let that get to you in some way and affect you in some way.
Actually, maybe this will be the last question because you have to go and write lots of stuff.
Yes, I've quite a bit to write.
What was the atmosphere like just explain to a person who doesn't cover court cases or wasn't there, what's the atmosphere in the court like when Miss Hand was given evidence? That was very dramatic from the outside.
Yeah, incredibly dramatic. And as I said, she had to stop numerous times. She was crying a lot. I think there wasn't, you could hear a penny drop, like it was just dead silence, throughout, and people were captivated by it. The evidence of Conor McGregor was far more compelling. I mean, we heard that there was compelling in terms of the way people reacted. We heard that there was, I didn't hear it myself, but his own side said this, that there was an audible gasp when he referred to the two lovely ladies. The way that he spoke at times was quite crass, and also he came up, a whole new story came out of his mouth while he was on the witness stand. I mean, that's indisputable. A new story from anything he'd said before. He floated the possibility of a third person being involved. Then when he was actually challenged on that, he said that's not what he was saying. He was a bit all over the place on the witness. Now he was nervous. He was visibly nervous, and people can fuck up, when they're put under pressure. But he seemed severely under pressure, quite nervous, and there was a lot of reaction, raised eyebrows and apparently an audible gasp when he was on the stand.
Okay, right. Well, listen, thanks for all the tweets, Paul, and the coverage was great. Shall we leave it there?
We leave it there. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's listened to us. We've been blown away by, the amount of people that have tuned in, particularly on YouTube, over all of these videos. It's been extraordinary. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.